Nintendo is no stranger to tough stances on piracy, but what's now unfolding with the Nintendo Switch 2 has sent a very clear message to users trying to carry over certain workarounds from the original Switch era. If you're an owner of the newly released Switch 2 or thinking about picking one up, there's an urgent matter involving MIG flash cartridges that could impact your ability to access online services permanently. This is not a speculative issue. Reports are now piling up across forums, Reddit, and social media suggesting that Nintendo has silently deployed a detection mechanism targeting the MIG Switch cartridge, hardware originally used with the Switch 1. A recent firmware update has made the MIG compatible with the Switch 2, but its use comes with high risks, namely, a permanent console-level ban from all online services. What's actually happening? The story started picking up momentum after users began sharing screenshots of error messages they encountered shortly after using a MIG Switch cartridge on their Switch 2. These aren't minor bugs or warnings. These are hard console bans that restrict any future access to Nintendo's online services. And unlike traditional bans that target accounts, this is reportedly at the hardware level, meaning there's no recovery for that specific unit. This has opened up a heated debate. On one hand, Nintendo is seen as protecting its platform from rampant piracy, a plague that afflicted much of the first Switch's lifecycle. On the other hand, critics argue that this enforcement punishes honest users who are simply trying to preserve their purchased content and enjoy it on new hardware. The EULA and its role. Some believe that this might be a result of the updated End-User License Agreement, EULA, accompanying the Switch 2. However, in terms of legal language, there hasn't been a drastic change since the days of the 3DS. What's new is the level of detection Nintendo now employs. The company appears to have reverse-engineered the MIG cartridge enough to identify its unique behavior or digital signature when inserted into a Switch 2. Once a MIG Switch cartridge is detected during any server interaction, even something as basic as checking for updates, the console is marked. An error message is shown that essentially tells the user their access to online features is permanently restricted. And in some cases, users haven't even noticed until much later, when trying to access the eShop or play online. Is the Nintendo account safe? Interestingly, the current wave of bans seems to stop at the hardware level. Nintendo accounts themselves have not, as of now, been deactivated or banned. This might offer some peace of mind, but it's not guaranteed that Nintendo won't change this strategy in the future. Several affected users are already expressing concern that account bans might be next, especially if duplicate serial numbers from dumped games are detected across multiple consoles. This could happen if Nintendo tracks which cartridges are played where and sees 2 copies of the same game ID on different hardware at the same time. That's enough for them to assume piracy, even if your intentions were perfectly legal. Again, while no account bans have occurred yet, users are advised to proceed with extreme caution. MIG firmware update, the root of the problem? Everything started escalating when MIG Switch developers pushed a firmware update that allowed the flash cart to operate with Switch 2 hardware. Previously, MIG was functional only with the original Switch, and users had largely accepted that its lifecycle would end with the older system. But with the update, curiosity and convenience got the better of some early adopters who rushed to test it with their Switch 2. The consequences were swift. Nintendo's systems seemingly pick up on the presence of MIG hardware within seconds of connecting to the network. The ban doesn't require long play sessions or extensive online activity. Just the mere fact that the cartridge was connected to a console and that console reached out to Nintendo's servers is enough. This also renders factory resets or account switching useless, as the ban is tied directly to the console's internal identifiers. Don't be tempted by compatibility. Some users have argued that they bought the MIG Switch for the sole purpose of preserving their game collection. And for the Switch 1, that logic holds up. There's no issue using a MIG Switch on a legacy system that never connects online anymore. But on a fresh Switch 2, where Nintendo is ramping up anti-piracy enforcement, it's no longer a safe strategy. You might be tempted to bring your old game library with you, using a familiar tool. But the safer route would be to repurchase digital versions, use Nintendo's official data transfer options, or simply stick to physical cartridges. As painful as it might be to double dip on games you already bought, it's better than turning your brand new console into a permanently offline machine. The bigger picture of Nintendo's anti-piracy fight. Nintendo has a long history of fiercely defending its intellectual property. From DMCA takedowns of fan projects to courtroom battles with ROM sites, the company does not tolerate gray areas. The Switch 1 generation taught them many lessons, especially how vulnerable hardware could result in massive piracy leaks. One needs to look no further than early gameplay footage of major titles like Tears of the Kingdom making their way online weeks before release. With the Switch 2, Nintendo is clearly trying to stop history from repeating itself. There's no known paperclip hack vulnerability this time, and with hardware bans happening just from using MIG cartridges, the message is loud and clear. Use unauthorized hardware at your own risk. What can you do now? If you already own a MIG Switch and are tempted to use it on a Switch 2, the best advice is don't. If you're absolutely determined to run backups, do so on a Switch 1 kept offline. The Switch 2, for now, should remain completely free from unofficial accessories unless you're ready to accept the risk of permanent consequences. For those who may have already used a MIG cartridge with a Switch 2 and haven't yet been banned, it's possible the ban could still come later. Nintendo may be doing staggered enforcement or waiting for batches of detection logs to act on. Disconnecting from the internet immediately and doing a full factory reset might help in some cases, but there are no guarantees. Final thoughts. It's tempting to take shortcuts, especially when they appear to be legal and are presented as convenient solutions to real problems. Game preservation is important, and consumers should have the right to access the media they've purchased across generations. But in a digital ecosystem dominated by online authentication and account binding, those rights are increasingly being filtered through corporate policies. Nintendo has drawn a hard line in the sand, and the Switch 2 is shaping up to be their most protected console yet. If you value your access to online play, updates, eShop content, and cloud saves, do not gamble with your hardware. The MIG Switch might still have a place with legacy systems, but it has no future with the Switch 2. In the end, your best move is to play it safe. Stick with official hardware, and preserve your investment in a console you can actually enjoy for years to come.